Welcome to the Nano podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernlin, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey through the world of nano-cap companies. For the past decade, I've talked to thousands of business owners across various industries. It's been an enlightening experience revealing the vast tapestries of entrepreneurship and innovation that thrives beneath the surface of mainstream media coverage. Each week, I will interview different leaders of nano-cap publicly traded companies to learn about their history, what they do now, and their future. As a reminder, none of this information is financial advice, and it is all for entertainment purposes only. Let's start this week's episode. Hi, everyone. On this week's episode, we have Ilan Sobol, the CEO of Bioharvest Sciences, stock ticker BHST. Bioharvest Sciences is the first and only fully validated industrial-scale plant cell technology platform for the production of plant metabolites. Ilan, thanks for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Will.
So, do you mind telling me a bit more about your background? In my brief research, it went all over the place from you growing up in South Africa to you doing a stint of university over in New South Wales to you introducing the entire country of Mongolia to Coca-Cola. So, can you tell me just a bit more about your background and kind of what led you to this point as CEO of Bioharvest Sciences?
Yeah, you've clearly done a little bit of digging into my background. I guess the best way to describe me is a global citizen. I've had the privilege of living and working in so many different countries. Having been born in South Africa, I left South Africa at the early age of 12 and a half, went to live in Australia. You'll see my accent kind of moves between Australian and South African depending on who I'm around. Australia was a great place to grow up in Sydney, Australia. And I did most of my education in Australia as well as a semester abroad in the US at a school called Babson, which is the number one entrepreneurial school in the US, which kind of was very, very impactful on my life. And I guess I like to say that I started my career on the back of a Pepsi Cola truck, because when I was in the US, Australians are allowed to work in the US legally for as long as they study. So when I finished my studies, I wanted to get a job in the US, and I managed to get an internship at Pepsi Cola. And literally, I started as what we would call a schlepper, somebody, two-wheeler, early in the morning, 2-liter cases of Pepsi up and down the streets of Boston. And I worked my way up through the organization, became a merchandiser. And then in the days of Crocodile Dundee, you're probably too young to know about Paul Hogan's very famous movie, Crocodile Dundee. I had this crazy Australian accent. So some bright guy said, put him in sales. He'll be good in sales. And there I went into sales, and I headed up business development in the Boston City area. And that basically started a career in fast-moving consumer goods. I then joined the Coca-Cola company and spent 18 amazing years as a senior leader in the Coca-Cola company, working across 12 years in Asia, where, I was based in Hong Kong for 5 years. I was general manager of the business in Hong Kong, Taiwan, Macau, and had the privilege of starting and building the business in Mongolia and launching brand Coca-Cola in Mongolia. And actually, I'm an honorary Mongolian. I love the country, love the people. And spent 4 years in China fighting the cola wars in China, building $1 billion juice business, working and doing all the marketing on the Beijing Olympics. And then I spent 3 years in South Africa. It was kind of cool to kind of go back home. And at a very important time for the country, did all the work on FIFA World Cup. And then I moved to the US. I spent 4 years, 3 of which I was general manager of the Glasso business unit, which is running businesses in the US. You'll probably be familiar with Vitamin Water, building Smart Water with my team into $1 billion business, and managing Powerade business as well as the energy portfolio. It was at the time about $4.5 billion business at retail. And then I decided at the tender age of 40, after being a global citizen and going from country to country, my wife actually told me, enough, pick one country. And for me, it was really important. I wanted to raise my children in Israel. and I moved my family to Israel in 2014 with 3 young kids. And I went from the front of the airplane, Will, to the back of the airplane, and from the beautiful Four Seasons Hotel in Atlanta, which is a gorgeous hotel. And I worked once at Regent Four Seasons in Sydney, so I really have a passion for hotels. And going from that hotel to the Red Rooftop Motel in Atlanta, which, trust me, is a place that needs a little bit of work. And I went into the startup world, and with 2 partners, we went into high-tech world and built a big data IoT and software company that we landed up in the beverage industry, that we landed up selling to Anheuser-Busch InBev. So we're the first major food tech exit to a multinational player in the Israeli food tech ecosystem. And I had the pleasure of working for Anheuser-Busch for a couple of years. The first year was Golden Handcuffs as part of the acquisition, but I really enjoyed working for them. They're a great company, real owners of the business, real innovators, until I got a little bit tired of the classics of corporate America, and I found Bioharvest. And I came to Bioharvest, Will, as an investor. And so basically, I fell in love with the company, the technology. Really, what I saw here in Bioharvest was an R&D gold mine. Amazing technology, IP strategy was well thought through, clinical trials, the ability to scale the botanical synthesis technology. And I invested in the company. I put my hard dollars, drove them crazy with the due diligence. I don't come from money. So whether it's $5,000 check or $50,000 check or a bigger check, it's the same due diligence. And I was really lucky that after I had completed the due diligence and the checks passed through the banking system, the CEO of the company, Dr. Zaki Rakib, who's become a very close friend and a partner in the last 5 years of this journey, he came to me and he said, look, you drove me crazy during the due diligence process, but I realized I need a professional CEO to come and run this company. Why don't you come and run this company? So for me, it was in a way 18 years of fast-moving consumer goods experience, then kind of reinventing myself into high tech for another 5 years. I thought, you know what? Maybe it's time to reinvent myself and to kind of go into biotech. And I will tell you now, Will, this has been the best 5 years of my professional career, and probably on a personal level, I wish I would have, discovered the world of biotech earlier on in my life. But I'm very grateful that I've landed here, because ultimately, I have the privilege today of leading a company that is the global leader in plant cell biology. There is no other company out there that understands how to unlock the secrets of cellular plant biology at scale the way we do. And, our North Star, and what we do every single day is we're developing life-changing molecules from plants, which are able to dramatically transform in a positive way the health and wellness of hundreds of millions of people, but doing this in a way which preserves the planet for generations to come, because of the way we produce these amazing cells with phytonutrients and phytomedicinal compounds. So there you go, from kind of a quick navigation through 25 years of working career.
Yeah, so I would love to kind of dig a little bit deeper into just a couple of the things you mentioned. One of them, before we get into Bioharvest Sciences, one of them was just like, how was the culture change going to, first off, Boston is a unique place, and then into an entrepreneurial school in America, where obviously Boston's one of the entrepreneur hubs of America. And then lastly, while you're doing that, you wanted to work, but you kind of went into more of a blue collar profession and made it into a managerial profession pretty quickly. So again, like, how did you know that you weren't just going to be a person schlepping for the few years you were at college, and that you knew you could work your way up quickly? And like, how did all that kind of entrepreneurial spirit hit you all at once?
I'm a big believer that things happen in life for a reason. And, God kind of shows us just, the keyhole, and we have to kind of open the doors. And I got this opportunity under kind of an exchange program to actually study in the US for a semester abroad. It was, for me, so important, because it actually became a critical part of my DNA to understand American culture. which is really so unique and different to the cultural backgrounds that I came from, and was so important. When I ran a business in the US, running multi-billion-dollar brands, you need to understand the heart of the consumer. And because I spent that semester in dorms, going to parties, doing all the things that college students do, whilst trying to, at the same time, build my education, it became a really critical formative base of understanding the DNA of the American consumer, but also being exposed to the best professors in the world at Babson really ignited the entrepreneurial spirit inside me. But I knew, it wasn't easy for me to get the opportunity actually to intern at Pepsi, because, I was an Australian, and do we hire this kid? I was a kid then. I was 21, 22 years old. And I was lucky. Some guy, Paul Abbott, if you're out there, thank you, Paul, for giving me that start in life. He gave me the opportunity, and I had good managers, which has really been part of the secret of my success, having good managers, even at that stage in my life, that saw potential and opened up opportunities. And I guess just because of my DNA, being an immigrant from South Africa to Australia, immigrants, you learn the values of life. You learn to work hard. You learn the importance of education. You learn the importance of doing the job properly. And at that stage, I also realized that if you want to be successful in business, you have to understand the business from literally the ground floor up. And you have to understand every single job. So when I understood the job of what a salesperson does, or what a delivery person does, it allowed me in much bigger jobs at Coke in South Africa, in China, to be able to put in place the right kind of route to market strategies, because I did that job. I did it. It's funny, a great story. When I was in China, I had 2 Harvard MBAs come and spend 4 months in my marketing organization. Really smart young kids, amazing people. And at the end of the 4-month program, we sat down and they'd worked on some really interesting projects. And at this stage, I unveiled to them that I went to Harvard. They're like, "What? You went to Harvard? Why didn't you tell that? Tell us that. Why did you wait till the end of the 4 months?" I'm like, "Yeah, I was at Harvard literally twice a day." They're like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Yeah, I would go and change the vending machines in Harvard twice a day." And they looked at me like, I said, "That was my MBA," right? So it also teaches you that, you don't have to be at the top business school. It's a school of hard knocks. It's being able to learn, having good people around you, the sheer value of hard work and mastering a specific area, just because of a fear of failure, right? That's really was kind of my story of my career. In every job, there were much bigger jobs for my age and the amount of experience I had. I was the youngest general manager ever in the Coca-Cola company at the age of 28, running Hong Kong, Taiwan, Macau, and Mongolia. I was so, wet behind the ears, right? But I had great people. I had great managers that I really embraced and learned from them. It was like a sponge, the same way I'm a sponge here 5 years ago, Bioharvest, to learn the biology, right? I think I failed biology at school. If there's, Mrs. Bennett, I'm really sorry. I remember she was my biology teacher at high school. I did my best. I think there was one subject in biology I was really good at, and I don't want to get into this on the podcast. But basically, I learned biology today by the best PhD plant cell biologist in the world. And so it becomes a passion. But again, it's all those building blocks makes you a better leader, a better person to drive change in an organization. And really kind of going back to, if I look at one of my personal business heroes out there, beacons of light in the business world that I think today is undervalued in the context of what he did to build an organization, and that is Howard Schultz, who built Starbucks, right? People don't really give the credit to Howard Schultz that he deserves when you look at what Starbucks is today as like a global brand, retail organization. And he had 3 kind of defining values that run his life. And I remember reading his book, Pour Your Heart Into It. And I recommend that to anybody out there. And he had 3 defining ways to live life. And living life means what you practice in the workplace. And they were: 1, care more than others think wise, right? This for me has been a virtue in how I've tried to manage every aspect of my personal life and obviously professional life. The other one is really risk more than others think safe. This is the story of entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
And the third one is basically all about literally dreaming more than others think practical. When we look at our company today and what we're doing in building life-changing molecules, it's all about ultimately dreaming about literally what in 3 years' time is our technology going to look like? How do we build bioreactors today going from, 250 liter bioreactors 18 months ago? Today, we produce our plant cells in the largest bioreactors, industrial bioreactors at north of 1,200 liters. And the company is now moving to do all the process engineering to go to 2,500, then 5,000. Because ultimately, as a company, we're all focused about one, discovering, developing, manufacturing, and democratizing life-changing plant molecules. And to democratize something, it's all about price value, and to be able to produce with economies of scale, to get the pricing right, to be able to democratize these life-changing molecules. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when it comes to health and looking after our overall health and wellness, there can be no boundaries, right? And finances is a boundary. So if we can democratize the life-changing molecules that we're working on today, and a good example is in November, through our CDMO business, our contract development and manufacturing organization, we signed a major partnership deal with a company called Tate & Lyle. Tate & Lyle is one of the biggest ingredients companies in the world. They have the largest sweetener business in the world, 186 years old. And they saw our technology, and we, as a result of them understanding our technology's ability to be a bridge, critical bridge between the plant kingdom and industrialization of literally life-changing plant molecules, we agreed to a partnership where we're developing the next generation of non-nutritive natural sweeteners. And if you think about today, the world, you look at the challenges from an overall health and wellness. Sugar is one of the biggest perils, one of the biggest challenges in everybody's overall nutritional plan. But if we can develop from unique, scarce plants that have very high sweet proteins, and with our technology, we're able to magnify the levels of those critical phytonutrients that are able to produce that sweet protein profile with a 0-calorie composition, and grow them in our bioreactors at scale, 5,000 liter scale, with clean, literally producing a final clean molecule, no insecticides, no herbicides, no fungicides, utilizing a micro fraction of the land, water, and energy, producing a molecule that can literally change the way people consume food and beverages. So this is the North Star of the company and the life-changing molecules that we go after. But going back, all of that experience, those building blocks, I could never be doing this every single day if I didn't have the benefit of that experience.
Yeah, to kind of go back on those building blocks, with you kind of introducing and launching Coca-Cola to Mongolia, I think I also read that you introduced like Minute Maid lemonade to the Chinese market too, if that's correct. So now with Bioharvest Sciences, how do you kind of weigh out where to emphasize your just time? Is it educating the market and letting them know that this product exists and why it's special? Or are you thinking more about scale is everything? If we can get it to the lowest price possible and do this at scale, then everything else will kind of fall into place once the price is at the right point. And how do you kind of weigh out those two different things and levers that are going to make you grow?
So what's critical before you talk about what you would call vertical growth, which is scale, and horizontal growth, which is geographical rollouts, the most important element comes down to efficacy, right? The most important element is producing life-changing molecules that through the right clinical trial validation are able to really drive a transformational positive change in health and wellness. So like our red grape cell product, this is Vinia, that yesterday, or, we won't timestamp this podcast, but February the 18th, we announced that in the last 4 years since entering into the US, we had cumulatively sold more than $50 million of this amazing molecule, which is the king of blood flow in the American market, because we took the red grape and through our technology, we understand exactly where are the cells in the plant that produce the unique in this case, phytonutrients. And what we do is we take those cells in our technology and we grow those cells initially in R&D on a Petri dish. And we do hundreds, if not thousands, of experiments where we change the food we feed the cells, we'll change the light, we'll change the temperature and a bunch of other variables that we don't talk about because they're in our IP box. And at this stage, we get the cells to do two things. One, we get the cells to produce the exact same phytonutrients of the plant. Two, we identify one key actual molecule that we look to increase by an order of magnitude. So in the case of our red grape cell product, Vinia, we focused on a critical molecule called piceid resveratrol. You've probably heard of resveratrol. It's a very popular anti-aging compound. We produce piceid resveratrol, which is the gold standard of resveratrol because it's 25 times more soluble than regular resveratrol. Unlike human beings, resveratrol is not created equal. So we're the only company in the world that can produce piceid resveratrol from grapes, together with catechin, quercetin, anthocyanin, and tannins at industrial scale. Every other player in the market today, in this case, is in what they call trans resveratrol, which is 25 times less soluble, in and out the body, 2 to 3 hours. We are long lasting in the body, 12 hours with a peak after 1 and a peak after 5 hours. And the way this product works, after taking one of these capsules every day for 90 days, we get the endothelial cells that line 60,000 miles of capillaries, veins, and arteries in our bodies to literally increase the amount of nitric oxide that they produce. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator, and we reduce the bad stuff, which is called ET1, which is a vasoconstrictor. So we increase the good stuff, we reduce the bad stuff. So as a result, we significantly increase the dilation of your arteries through teaching your endothelial cells to basically increase nitric oxide and reduce ET1. And as a result, you have way more blood flow in your body. Think about it. Those 60,000 miles are now like a 4-lane highway versus like a 1-lane little road. And because of more blood flow, you have more physical energy, right? Because there's more oxygen and nutrients flowing to the body, tissue, cells, and organs. And because you have more blood flow going into your brain, because our actual final compound gets below the blood-brain barrier, and we're able to get more blood flow to the peripheral part of the brain, you have much better mental alertness, goodbye brain fog. So this product today is the king of blood flow. We have more than 50,000 active subscribers. We've doubled the business every single year for the past 3 years. And so we ask ourselves, this is just in the US, and the US market is so big. And by the way, this is all direct to consumer and direct to doctor. After 18 years in retail, Will, when I came into this job, and every quarter I was on an airplane to Walmart, Costco, BJ's, 7-Eleven, Kroger, meeting with the buyers. I'm done with retailers. We're building this business direct to consumer, and that's what we've done. We've built a direct to consumer machine built off the power of this molecule and the overall composition and its ability to really change people's lives. We have everything I've shared with you is anchored in clinical trial that's all double-blind placebo that shows a significant increase in dilation of arteries, demonstrates the ability to maintain blood pressure within already normal levels, reducing oxidation of LDL cholesterol, and reducing oxidative damage to the cells. So we entered the US. The US market is $60 billion in dietary supplements.
Wow.
And at the time, we decided to take this actual compound and to go the direction of dietary supplement versus the drug direction, because as a company, we'd already spent $100 million on our technology and 17 years of work. And therefore, we thought this was an easier way initially to validate the power of our technology and monetize our technology. So We've now focused on the US of A. We have Israel, which is a nice little playground to test and learn, and then we scale everything into the US market. And we will continue the size of the market for us where blood flow and call it heart health and physical energy and mental alertness is about $15 billion market. Okay, so for us, there's a long road in the US, and there are major categories that we're penetrating now with the launch of our coffee product, which is, again, utilizing different types of carriers, delivery mechanisms to be able to bring this superior blood flow to the consumer. So coffee was just an amazing, America runs on coffee. Now you can have your coffee with your supplement together, and they reinforce each other, because when you have one vineyard coffee, right, because of the pie seed resveratrol and the benefits of blood flow, you don't need 5 coffees a day. You just take 1 coffee a day, and you get your caffeine stimulation, you got your vineyard to keep you going all through the day. Same thing for decaf. Think about it. Decaf consumers, they want the energy, but they can't handle the jitters and the crash from caffeine. Now they get the energy from basically vineyard that's inside their decaf coffee pod. So we launched in K-Cup. We sold more than $2 million of coffee in the last 14 months. Again, all direct to consumer with the most premium coffee in the market. And shortly, we were going to be going into Nespresso pods as well. We're the original Nespresso, the first ever superfood in Nespresso. And we just launched our line of teas. We have 4 different flavors of teas. Again, an amazing delivery system. And we will continue to go in and disrupt major billion-dollar categories. Coffee, functional coffee and tea is $5 billion. People are looking for what we bring is superior science, superior efficacy because of our clinical trials. And nothing, with my 18 years of Coke experience, nothing leaves the door without quantitative taste test research to make sure that our products taste better than market leaders. So the size of the US pie, talking about horizontal and vertical growth, the US market, it's so big. There's so many categories that we're going in and disrupting with our strategy. We call it our Vineyard Inside strategy of superior science, superior efficacy, and superior taste. So we will continue to focus on this market. In addition, we will bring new molecules to the market. This is our olive cell molecule, okay, where we produce the highest levels of verbascoside in the world. And this is targeting liver health. If you think about Americans today, 1 in 4 Americans today, unfortunately, have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, right? They need to look after their livers earlier in their life. And this is a critical product that we're working to bring out into the market. And then as it relates to horizontal growth, moving into market expansion, at the right time, we will do that, but very surgically and with very clear prioritization. And our next market that we're going to focus on is the Japanese market. Japan, if you think about it, it's 110 million affluent consumers. They understand in their DNA the power of the plant kingdom and what the plant kingdom does from an overall longevity and health and wellness perspective. And part of the strategy that we're building, think tea. Tea in Japan is huge. Coffee, by the way, Japan is the biggest coffee culture. It's even bigger than the US when it comes to the coffee culture in Japan. So again, this is all part of our master plan and master strategy on how we drive our direct-to-consumer business, because ultimately our technology today feeds 2 business units. One business unit is the direct-to-consumer, direct-to-doctor, e-commerce business, which is cash generating, right? It's a 24-hour turnaround. I'm not waiting for money from retailers, okay? It's 24-hour, sell on Shopify. It comes into my bank account within 24 hours. This business is allowed us to scale our technology and mature our technology to the point that, we have a factory today, 25 tons producing factory. We sell every kilo of vineyard at roughly $2,700 a kilo. So that factory can produce between $60 to $70 million. And that factory costs us $5 million to build. So one-time CapEx of $5 million can generate $60 to $70 million a year in revenue at full capacity. That's software economics in biotech. And we call our business fast biotech because that's what we really do. We're fast biotech. We're bringing biotech into the FMCG world. And so ultimately, with this factory that we've now digitized and we've basically digitized every biological metric to be able to drive unique optimization, growing at significant industrial scale. This obviously allows us to improve margins, to get the company profitable. We've been very clear that our focus is to get the company EBITDA profitable end of third quarter, early fourth quarter of this year, as we start to really continue to scale, drive that dramatic scaling of the business. And then ultimately, today, when you look at democratization, today, this capsule of Vinia, right? Think about all these benefits. Today we sell, our key package is a $99 3-month subscription. So it's $1.07 for all of these benefits. You go to a coffee shop today and you buy, a coffee, it's $5-6, right? For a cappuccino, let alone a frappuccino, right? So that to me is really part of our democratization. And as inflation goes up in the US now, 20-25% in the last 4 or 5 years, we've maintained our pricing. How have we done that? We've done that through scaling, because it's against the beliefs of the company. We're trying to democratize the power of the plant kingdom. So we've been able to grow our margins with the benefits of scale by literally scaling a business, increasing efficiencies, digitizing the facility. Almost in the future, we will be moving to automation, which will allow us to continue to democratize molecules. Now, democratizing molecules means different things in the dietary supplement world versus what we do, say, for example, when we're working with pharmaceutical companies in our CDMO business, which is our contract development and manufacturing organization business, where we're working with pharmaceutical companies to produce unique APIs for them, which give them ownership of the IP as it relates to the composition. We'll always own the IP as it relates to production, but we're now able to provide them unique consistency, reliability, stability on pricing. You buy plant materials out there today, it can be, pricing is based on seasonality. It's based on, with climate change, pricing changes, the actual composition changes. We're now able to bring stability to be able to drive these companies' democratization. And let alone, if you look at Tate & Lyle and the project we have with Tate & Lyle, ultimately, if we're going to move the world from sugar to non-nutritive natural sweeteners, it has to be at a price where there's a reason to switch for the consumer. Because at the end of the day, and that's going to mean the continuous scaling of our technology to drive the democratization.
So as we wrap up here, you talk about the democratization. You talk about selling direct to consumer. And then you talked a little bit about kind of your roadmap with your new kind of extract from the olive. How do you weigh out the combination of new research coming out that's not within your lab and you all saying maybe we should experiment with this, research that you all do in the lab where you experiment with different lights and stuff like that, and then also what just your feedback you're actually getting directly from the customer now that you have a customer relationship where they say, hey, this should come in a 240 pack instead of 120 pack. And then you start looking into that. How do you kind of weigh out where to drive the market next? Because the customer might say something different than the science and vice versa.
Okay, look, it's a good question. Look, we're a science-based company. So everything that we do in our direct-to-consumer business, right, we don't launch products in the market without going through in vitro. In the case of Vinia, we had in vitro trials, then we made animal trials, and then we had clinical trials, human clinical trials. So this is the way we roll. It's a disciplined approach, and obviously we're very, very focused on communicating what we can say, which is an outcome of our clinical trials, according to, in the case of supplements, according to FDA guidelines of what they call structure function claims, and making sure that our our clinical trials are able to support those structure function claims that we make. Yes, what's interesting is with 50,000 consumers, we learn a lot about other benefits that our product is able to deliver for consumers from a health and wellness perspective. And that's the power of having such a large customer base and going direct to consumer. And in fact, without getting into too much details, obviously we need to be careful as a publicly listed company, but that is a critical feedback loop for us to do further research, for us to be able to go and do further research, further clinical trial research. And shortly we'll be announcing something like this to the marketplace, where we've seen some very interesting outcomes from consumers on our product that we want to explore more from a science-based perspective, and to go back into the clinical trial route. So it's always fact-based, having the voice of the customer or the consumer giving you feedback, because initially, when you bring a product to market, you bring it to market in a certain space, and all of a sudden you see consumers, specifically in the area of blood flow, it benefiting consumers in other ways. And then you need to circle back to be able to make sure you have the science and the efficacy to be able to validate that if you decide to talk about that in the marketplace. We can only talk about what we have actually validated in clinical trials, double-blind placebo, according to the Helsinki Convention, and obviously trials that are published in peer-reviewed scientific journals. That's the kind of the cycle. I would also say that as a company, we've done a lot of work to identify what we call our life cycle molecule map, which are the key molecules or compounds that we believe have the greatest opportunity of bringing to the marketplace to address critical needs today that are, let's say, underserved by consumers. So this is what we bring to the market, but also we have the benefit of engaging in our CDMO with pharma companies, with cosmetic companies, with nutrition companies like a Tate & Lyle, where they're coming to us. And in many cases, they've identified the compounds. They understand the plants that can deliver these compounds. And we become the critical bridge to be able to actually take the plant once and be able to create the cell banks, and then utilize our unique botanical synthesis technology to be able to produce consistently, reliably, non-GMO. We don't in any way change the molecular composition of the molecule, and doing it at economic viability. So we have this opportunity to go through this path, but in this case, we're doing it for a customer, and that customer has the muscles from a distribution perspective to be able to democratize. It'll be Tate & Lyle that will democratize the next generation of non-nutritive sweetener. It'll be pharma company X that will democratize the next, critical enzyme, etc., that we produce for the marketplace. And that's the benefit of being able to scale this business through partnerships, critical, what I call anchor partnerships. And this CDMO business ultimately, should trade at an EBITDA, and you look, at peers of about a 40 multiple on actual, on actual EBITDA. Your supplement direct to consumer business is more like a 15 to 20 multiple. They're still both great multiples, but it shows you where the role of our direct to consumer business has been amazing for us to be able to get the company ultimately profitable by the end of the year on an EBITDA level, but importantly, has enabled us to scale our technology. $50 million in sales is a lot of capsules, okay? To scale the technology and to be able to really do this in a way that we've matured the technology so that we can 4x the facility for our next facility and then 4x it again, and we'll continue to kind of grow with scale as we bring these molecules to market.
Well, Ilan, love the business model, love the hybrid business model, love the energy, love the message, love everything you're doing to help with people's health. If people want to hear more about what you're up to, want to buy your products, where should I send my audience?
Okay, so for people to learn more about the company, you can go to our website, which is bioharvest.com. You can also go where we are traded on NASDAQ. We recently uplisted to NASDAQ in November of last year. So it's very easy to have full access to information about our company. The ticker is BHST. And in a case of people looking to purchase Vinia, you can just go to vinia.com and go learn about the product. And if people are really, really interested, we conduct every week, we have a session going back to coffee again, of Coffee with Ilan. They can contact our head of investor relation, Justin, Justin, at bioharvest.com. And I do a 1 hour Zoom session with either existing investor partners or new investors to kind of have a talk like we're talking right now about the business, our philosophy. And so, for people to have access to the CEO, to ask questions, to seek to understand as much as I can do in this kind of public setting.
I love that. Well, thanks again for coming on. And for those of you still listening, please remember to subscribe and review. Thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed the discussion.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or any offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute an endorsement therefor by NanoCap Podcast or its affiliates. The NanoCap Podcast express disclaims all liability for any individual's use of the information presented in this